Alright guys, so today what I want us to look at is recreating this heading element with the decorative underline using BEM classes and using modifiers for every aspect of this. It's a little bit of overkill, but I just want to show you how powerful that actually is, and you can decide how many modifiers you need. Whether you can create a single class which has all the attributes you need, or whether you want to be able to control each of those attributes with its own modifier. So what we're looking at here is a very basic text heading. On that heading you can see I've got a bunch of classes I've added. I might zoom in on that a little bit in the video so you can see that. And what we're looking at is that every aspect of this being controllable. So I'm going to start taking these things away. Take away my baseline, take away my width, take away my alignment, take away my outline, take away my thick, and take away my rounded. Okay, so now I've got a heading underline, and that is basically a placeholder for this heading, and then I've got a heading underline after. Now I generally do an underscore after if I'm going to target the after selector, so that it just makes sense. So I know that if it's got after, I know that I need to be looking at the after pseudo selector and applying styles to that. So what we have here is a heading, which we've got sets of flex, column, and then we're using the after pseudo selector to get that line. So I'm going to work through all of that and show you this as an example, just to, if I just wanted that line, instead of being after the text to be up under the baseline, all I have to do is select my baseline class, and now it's moved up under the baseline. If I want that to be a thick line, I select my thick class, and now I've got a thick line. If I want it to be rounded, I select my rounded class, and now I've got rounded edges on it. If I want my text to have like a black outline around it, and I'm going to show you some tricks with outline too, because the outline or text stroke property just doesn't work well. It's different in different browsers, and it's just not a preferred method for adding an outline for me. So if I want an outline on that, I would select my, there's my class down here, underline outline, and now you can see up here I've got a black outline, so you can really see it on this yellow underline. You can see a black line around the G descender. This is what we're going to recreate. So first I'm going to start off by just removing everything here, and I'm going to remove all of those classes. I'm having some weird issues with bricks where I'm clicking on things here. The settings don't always come up. There we go, it's just came up there. I find often when that happens, if you click on the structure, then it does work. So there's some little weird quirky bug happening in the UI. So the first thing I do is delete all of those classes that I created. So this heading underline, so I've just got rid of everything that I just showed you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a heading element, and on that heading element all I want to do is just make that nice and big so we can use it. So I'm just going to use the styling of that element itself. I'm going to make it say 10 rem and make it a nice bold font, say 700. There we go. I'm a heading. Pretty straightforward to start with, right? We need to give this a class name so we can target it. So I'm going to call this underline. Simple enough. Will I do? Maybe I'll call it header. Header underline, make it a little bit more specific. So I've got a header underline, and on that header underline, all I want to do is set some flex properties. Fortunately, with the heading element, there are no flex properties in the UI. There are flex properties under your layout, but that's only for alignment of self. So what we have to do is go into our CSS, target the root meaning we're targeting whatever selected. In this case, it's the header underline class. So we're going to make sure that's selected. We want to tell that we want it to be display fix. And I'm a two-finger typist here, so I keep looking down at the keyboard. Display flex and flex direction of column. I'm going to come back to this class a little bit later because there's something else I want to add on there as well. So that's turned this heading into a flex display with a direction of column. All right, now what we want to do is add an after element here for the line. And I think the easiest way to do that is to just add a element for that. So I'm going to create an element. Oops. This is just a naming thing. I prefer this because then we know that I'm going to target the after pseudo selector. So it just makes sense to laugh afterwards. Okay, so we've got our after. And what we're going to do is make sure we're selecting our after pseudo class. Now, by default, Brex just has hover, active, and focus. If you haven't got after, you need to just type in up here, and press the enter key, and it'll create the after pseudo selector for you. I've already got it there, so I'm just going to hit after. Now, the other thing I've found is sometimes when you change the pseudo selector, it deselects the class that you're on. So you've got to make sure we're looking at our underline after and using the after pseudo selector. All right. So on this, what we need to do is so in the content, we've got to put a space in there. So you know when you're putting pseudo selectors before and after pseudo elements, if you don't put anything in the content, it just doesn't display anything at all. So normally you just do a content with a space. So you've got to put a space in here, or it will not display. All right. So in our background, we're just going to use maybe our accent color for the background, and our typography. We're going to set the typography in our layout. We're going to set the sizing of a width of 100%. We're going to set a height of maybe 8 pixels. All right. So straight away on our after pseudo selector for the underline after element, we've got a yellow underline. All right. What if we want that line to be thick? So what I would then do is copy that class name there, and we create a new one. But I want a modifier -- thick. Okay. Now again, we have to make sure we're on our after pseudo selector. So we're going to have after and thick selected. And on that, we set the height of that to say 20 pixels. All right, so now that we've got the 20 pixel on there, that's a nice thick after. If we don't want it thick, we just take the modifier off and it's back to being the original. If we do want it thick, we put the modifier on it to make it thick. Okay. Now the next thing we want to do is move this line up under the baseline rather than being after the text. So let's create another class. Oops, wrong thing. And after -- I'll call this baseline. Okay, and on the baseline, again, we're going to target the after. This is where this naming comes in handy, where you've got after. So whenever you see that, you know if you're going to target that, you've got to make sure you're on the correct pseudo element up here. So what we want to do is move our margin up on that. So we've got the baseline and after selected. So let's try minus 0.3 EM. What that looks like. Oops. That looks pretty close. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right. So here we see our first problem where we've got the line sitting on top of the text. All right. So the obvious thing that we might think to do is look at the heading underline after pseudo selector. So both of those are selected. So that time they both stay selected. We want to set the Z index on that to -1. We're going to see a problem here. Line has disappeared completely. So why did the line disappear? Z index is a very interesting thing. So if you do not specify Z index on parent elements, they assume a z-index of 0. And the stacking order matters. So when I put a -1 on this after pseudo element, it's putting it behind the color of the section because the section has an implied z-index of 0. So what we need to do is tell this block here, we want to start a new z-index stacking order. The way we do that, go back to our header underline class, go to our CSS, and we set a new z-index stacking order using isolation. Isolation, isolate. There we go. So now we've got our yellow line is now behind our text, but it's not going behind the section. That's because the z-index stacking order starts from this heading, and then the after pseudo selector for the line here technically is above that heading, but because we've set a negative index on that, it goes behind it. So it doesn't matter what I set that to. Now, if I go back to the line after, and I set the z-index on that to, put on it, deselected it, I set the z-index that to -50. It still works because it's relevant to the text block above it, or the heading above it. So okay, so -1's going to do it for us. Now the other thing we wanted to do is make it rounded. So what do? Just grab one of these, copy that name, just makes it easier than typing. And we'll put a new one in and we'll call that rounded. Okay, and on our rounded, after rounded, go to our border. Where's our border gone? There we go. And maybe we might link those and set those to say 10 pixels. All around. And now we've got a rounded border. Okay, so if we don't want it rounded, take the rounded off. If we do want it rounded, put the rounded on. Okay, and I'm going to the nth degree with modifiers here. You may not do this. You might have a heading style with an underline, but all these properties are set on the one class. What I'm doing here is showing you how the modifiers work so you can do this and have full control over every single element. Now, the other thing we had here was the ability to make this line not as wide and align it. So we go back to our CSS and we're going to add, we're going to put that as a, after, we're going to make that 70 wide. So 70W, okay, select my after again, 70W, go to my style, and we make that 70%. All right, so now we've got a 70% wide underline. What else do we want? We want to be able to align it. So we'll make this center. Well, actually, this is a tricky one because we don't, yes, we can target this. We can either target the parent of that and align the cross-axis, or we can target the actual element and align self. So I'm going to do this to the actual element so it makes more sense. I'm going to put that end on the end, still on the after pseudo selector. We're going to go into the layout. We're going to align self to the end. So now we've got an end. Let's do that again. Let's add another class. And we'll call that center. Again, we're still on our pseudo selector, which is good. So in the center, let's get rid of the end. Got center and after selected. We now align self to center. All right, so we got a line here. We want it in the center, we add center. If we want it on the end, we add end. How simple is that? All right. So the other thing we had was a black outline around this text, and so that you can see where it crosses the line. You can do that with text stroke. Text stroke, depending on the size of your heading, is a bit of a problem. And I'll show you what I mean. If I go to back to here, I'm going to create a new class. We're not going to target the after because we want to target the main text. So if I do a dash dash outline, that'll do for now. So the header outline, and we set the through CSS, set the root. We set the text stroke. I think it's the 1px. That's how it works. Might need, this is in Chrome, so we might need the WebKit prefix for that to work. There we go. So we've got a basic outline of 1 pixel. It's okay. The reason I don't like it is if you've got thinner text, the outline actually goes to the inside of the text. The other thing is that it behaves differently in Firefox and Chrome. So in Firefox, you get squared off edges, and in Chrome you get squared off edges. In Firefox, you get rounded edges, so you get a totally different look depending on the browser. So what I prefer to do is not use this method, but use the actual text shadow. I'm going to copy and paste some stuff in here. So this uses a text shadow. I've got that on whites. Let's change that to zeros. Yeah. So it looks pretty much the same. We've still got our black outline just using a text shadow. The difference is it goes to the outside of the stroke and it's rounded. It doesn't matter whether it's Firefox or Chrome, you've got a rounded outline. Now, moving forward from that, what I've done is just created I'm just going to copy and paste another rule into here. And with this, I've done exactly the same thing, but I've replaced the text shadows with, so this was normally -1, -1 with no blur, and then my outline color. I've replaced that with CSS variables so we can change that easily. So if I wanted that to be wider, let's say, and by the way, this kind of loses its appeal when you get too big with these. So if I went 3 by 3, you can see they're not exactly aligned. But that might be the effect you want. Oops, what did I do there? There we go, big mistake. So big mistake 101, I set that accidentally. I did not select the class, so I was setting it on the actual ID of the element, which is not the right thing to do. We want to set that on the class, so to make sure that's selected, put it on there, and then we've got our heading stroke there. So what we've ended up with is a standard heading, and this has all been done within the Bricks UI. Standard heading, which is a header underline class. We've said we want an after on there, which gives us our line. We've gone heading underline after thick to make it thick. We've told it we want it to align to the baseline, to move it up. We've told it we want the line rounded. And we've told it we want it only 70% wide. We want to not center, we've got too many there. We want it to align to the end, and we want a stroke outline on the text. And with that stroke outline on the text, if that looks too big, maybe make that 2 pixels. Maybe that looks better, looks more accurate. So it's pretty cool. Now, how can we use this elsewhere? So if I get another section and I add a text box, sorry, a heading, and let's make it nice and big so we can see it. Typography, or say, let's make that a little bit smaller, make it say 7 REM, and we want to (7 REM) and make it bold again so we can see what's going on with it. 7 REM, and we've got a heading. Right, I want this to be a outline. So it's a header underline. Okay. Then we want the header underline after, which gives us our actual line. Then we want it to be, say, 70% wide, and we want it to be in the center. Oh, wrong one. Heading out, so we want it to be center aligned. There we go, it's lined in the center, and we want it to be rounded. All right, there it is there. And that looks fine. We want to stick that up under our baseline. Then we just select our baseline there, and that moves up baseline. Now, let's say, and you could have modifications for colors as well. Let's say we want to change this standoff. We think that's too close. We want that to be further away. So what I do is I go to my baseline class, style, layout, and my baseline. Oh, here we go. This is where it makes sense to use after or before as an element name when you're using those selectors. So I've got nothing here, which is a reminder that I've got to select my after, because that's what I'm applying it to. So if I say, actually, I want that to be a bit further away, so make it minus 0.2 rem. So, not rem, em. So let's move to 0.2 em away from that, 0.2 em away from that. Let's say we want to go the other way. We want to go 1 em further away. That's crazy, but you can move it further away. Minus 1. Yeah, sticks it up there. Minus 1.5. So we've actually taken our after selector and stuck it on the top. 1.3 maybe. So we can turn this underline into an overline just by changing where that modifier is. While you do that, I don't know, you could probably create another class for overlines, but it's pretty damn cool, right? 0.2, I'll put that back. We don't like the color of this being our default of the, what have we got, the accent color. We go back to our underline after. We're still in our after selector. Go to our background, and let's make that a green, or this green here. So you can see it's changed everywhere, even though they're different size headers, different properties. So this one's aligned to the end, this one's aligned to the beginning. Let's take the baseline off this one. So that one's got pushing it up under the baseline. I think I put the wrong value in there. I did. After baseline. Too much mucking around. I think we had it at 0.3. Bring it up under the baseline. We did. So we've got this one here pulling up under the baseline, and this one there is after the sender. And all we've done is change which classes we're adding to that as modifiers. So this is the power of BEM. It is a really, really simple way of grouping all of your styling into readable class names. You can easily understand what they are, and then you can create modifiers to change properties, which you would do if you've got multiple variations of the same sort of thing. Create modifiers for it. I can change colors here. I'm going to do one more. Actually, I'm going to change a color. I'm going to go underline after. And I'm going to change that to dash dash accent. Okay, I'm going to call it, that's my accent color. All right, I'm then going to make sure I'm on my after, using my accent. That's wrong one. After, I'm going to change my background to be my accent color. Right? So all I have to do is make this the accent color, is add the accent class. If I take the accent class off, it uses the default color. If I add the accent class on, it's using the accent color. Amazing, isn't it? So anyway, I hope this is something that's been inspirational for you for using BEM with bricks. The class system of bricks just makes this easy, and I think that it's a great way to style and keep everything organized. So let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe, hit the like, let me know if you like this kind of thing. Thank you.